So the Nintendo Switch is here, and I can see lots of debate of whether it's better than the PS Vita, or indeed if it should be considered the successor to the Vita. I thought I'd do a video giving my thoughts on how the two systems compare. So I'll start with the plus points for the Vita. When deciding whether to take the Switch or Vita with me on the train yesterday, one thing that sealed the decision for me was the size of the system. The Vita is just more portable and fits into my jacket pocket, whereas the Switch does not. This is a big deal to me because most of my gaming is on handhelds, and during my journey to and from work. The Switch doesn't fit into my jacket pocket, and my Switch case doesn't actually fit into my laptop bag. Admittedly, I do have a thin laptop bag. It's a pretty big system and wide with the Joy-Cons connected. The charging point for the Vita is also a big advantage for me. I can use the same cable on my desk or at home that I use for my tablet and my phone as for my Vita. It just means I can easily charge it when I need to without having to have an additional lead and to swap up plugs. I realise this may sound like I'm being lazy, and I am, but I do think convenience is important. In terms of comfort, I find the Vita more comfortable to play. The placement of the buttons and analog sticks and not having a proper D-pad feel kind of off for me on the Switch. I can understand why the Joy-Cons were designed this way so that you can have local multiplayer with two Joy-Cons, but it just doesn't feel as comfortable to hold and play games compared to the Vita. I do, however, like the versatility of the Switch controls so that I can take the Joy-Cons out and hold them in separate hands or slide them into the Joy-Con grip. The button placement may not be as comfortable as the Vita, but sitting on my bed with the Switch in my lap while holding a Joy-Con in each hand is a great way to play. Local multiplayer is a big advantage for the Switch, not only using it as a console, but even in tablet mode, having a race on fast RMX with my son and using a Joy-Con each is a lot of fun. While the Vita is great for solo play, I would choose to take the Switch on holidays with the family. Price-wise, the Vita is obviously cheaper, but given it's been out for 5 years, you'd expect the price to be lower than it is today. Lack of supply of Vitas and continued demand has meant the price has not fallen. When you add the cost of a decent sized memory card, which is required, you're coming close to the Switch's price. In terms of battery, the Vita beats the Switch. Not only does it last longer when playing games, I found even in sleep mode that the Switch can lose 10 to 20% overnight. I've had my Vita in sleep mode for over a week and the battery barely dropped. I'm comfortable taking my Vita to work when it only has 50% charge because I'm confident I'll be able to play during both 1-hour journeys without needing to charge it. The Switch, on the other hand, was nearly drained from 100% in one day when playing fast RMX on my journeys to work and back. The user interface on the Switch is much better. It's clean, intuitive and easy to use. I much prefer it to the Vita's bubbles, which at this point look old-fashioned. The Switch being a newer machine also means the speed of using the menus and jumping in and out of the games is far faster and more fluid compared to the Vita. Memory cards is another area where the Switch wins. It's been known from before the Vita was even released that memory cards are way overpriced, and even after 5 years on the market, the price has not gone down. I bought a 128GB SD card for my Switch for cheaper than a Vita 32GB card, and I haven't even needed to use it yet because the Switch has 32GB of onboard storage. While this isn't a lot for today's standard console, for a handheld it's enough to play most games on the system. Being able to play the Switch on your TV will be a selling point for many, but I'm predominantly a handheld gamer and I haven't even taken the dock out of the box. I value remote play as a feature far more than being able to play on a TV. I find it amazing that I can play Horizon in bed while my wife watches some random TV show. With remote play, the Vita will always have an advantage over the Switch in terms of games library, assuming you've got a decent Wi-Fi connection or you're close enough to your PS4. It makes the comparison between the two systems more interesting because the Vita has access to play current-gen console games through remote play and potentially a much greater library of third-party AAA games. Obviously, to have access to this you need to have bought a Vita and a PS4, which would cost a lot more than just buying a Switch. The Vita itself has got a massive library of games as it's been out for more than 5 years, so it's not really fair to compare current game libraries. I do think the Vita had more good games at launch than the Switch, although Zelda would easily win in terms of which had the single best launch game. If someone was to choose to buy a Vita or Switch today, the Vita would be my recommendation based on it being cheaper and having a bigger library of excellent games. However, the pipeline of games is reducing and there may be only a handful of games that come out in 2018. Vita may have the stronger library now, but the ball is in the Switch's court, and with all the indie games and first-party games coming to the Switch and with the power of the system itself, Nintendo has the potential to far exceed the Vita's library. So, is the Switch a successor to the Vita? In my eyes, yes. I've loved playing all the indie games on the Vita, and if that support moves over to the Switch, I'll be a happy gamer. Sony originally promised console gaming on the go with the Vita, but the big games dried up pretty quickly. I'm hoping that the Switch will deliver on Sony's vision of console quality gaming on the go, and I'm hopeful that I'll be entertained on my train journeys for years to come. I don't want to get into fanboy wars. I think both systems are great and I'm happy that I have both. At this point, I still prefer playing on my Vita, and that's partly due to it being more portable and comfortable to play, and because I've got a massive backlog of games that I want to play, although I think that will change next year when there are less game releases. Thanks for watching, and tell me below which one you feel you'd prefer to play.